Okay, I'm going to start the live stream. Okay, we are live right now. I haven't started the countdown clock, but since we're live, what that means is that there'll be thousands of viewers who will get a notification that we have gone live. And then all I have to do is start the timer as soon as, there we go. And so there are already now over 30 viewers online, and they'll get more and more of them will come online in the next 10 minutes. Okay. Okay. So we're getting a few questions already, but I'll save them for when we start.
Okay. Lovely colors of your symbol. Lovely.
Yes,
here.
this animation is of my own design.
Very good. Oh, I like it. Excellent. You do graphics too? Or computer graphics or something?
Well, I did this one. It was, I did each of the frames individually. That has 720 different frames.
Goodness. Lovely. It is very, very appealing, very interesting. I like it very much. Yeah.
I call it the rainbow yin yang.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, the yin yang. Yeah. Does it hypnotize?
Well, I suppose it could.
I don't know if you look at it without moving your eyes from it. Who knows?
I think it is a healing image.
Yeah, I know. It's energetic also in a peaceful way. Yeah. Very lovely. I like this thing of changing the colors, of course. That makes it even more interesting. Lovely, lovely symbol, yes.
Okay. I'll be right back, Anabela.
Okay. I'll disconnect my charger because I think doesn't need it, but let's see. We're going to put my very dear Jorgensen Devan. Stupala, no querido.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna be back again.
Hmm.
Okay. Less than 2 minutes to go. Do you have some water with you?
I do have some green tea. Yeah.
Oh, that's what I have too.
Really? Well, mine you can see through, but it's green tea. Yeah.
Yeah, no, mine is like green tea. It's an oolong.
Yeah, I know. Mine is a mix. As a matter of fact, it's a mix. Today is a mixture of white and green with a
Oh.
little bit of jasmine and vanilla.
Oh,
Vanilla. Very nicely flavored. Organic, yeah.
Yes, this is organic too. Okay, we're just about ready to
Almost.
start. Okay. Welcome, everybody. We are now live over YouTube. I'm with Dr. Anabela Cardoso, who is the author of 3 books on instrumental trance communication, also known as electronic voice phenomena. I hope most of you have had a chance to view the 2 previous videos that we've done. In the first one, Anabela talked about how she got started working in this area and what it's like, some of the reports from other researchers. And in the second interview, she talked about what the voices have been telling her, how they describe what life is like in their dimension, and other messages that they may have for us. So we're going to be largely taking your questions today. Anabela, would you like to start with an opening statement of any kind?
Thank you, Jeff. Well, an opening statement would be very improvised, to say the truth, that I am very aware that all this story of ITC may seem kind of a science fiction story, but it is not. This is true. It's real. It has happened to me, who never expected such a thing to happen. And so I think it can happen to anybody with the determination, persistence, good intentions, which are also very important, and perhaps something else that I'm not aware of. But basically, this is true. I mean, it does exist, this communication. I say this because many people doubt it. No, it is true. It happened to me. And I am a lay person, not a person of, well, I was not a person of the so-called paranormal. So it can happen to anybody. And everybody should try. At the end of, by the way, at the end of this book of mine, this last one, yeah, there is a manual. Now it came to my mind for who wants to try this contact. If you have no idea or a little bit apprehensive, I think this is a good handbook for those who are interested. Yes.
Well, one of the things that you and I discovered is that it appears that there were some anomalous voices that showed up on the first and maybe also the second of the interviews that we recorded earlier. So that suggests to me that there are very possibly anomalous voices that will show up on this live stream. Do you have any thoughts about that, Anabela?
Well, indeed, because I listened to the audio tracks of both, and there are anomalous voices in both. Interestingly, the first time that I really noticed this was months ago at the beginning of the year in an interview for a group in Portugal. And even in the video proper, it's more difficult, of course, to perceive the voices while you are looking at images, obviously. But I started listening to other voices besides our own. This was also a professional video YouTube. And I analyzed the video, and there are approximately 90 anomalous voices in that one that I made for Portugal, something like in February this year. In our last ones, there are also voices. I could not yet listen to the last one, the last interview, but I have listened to the first one carefully. Even some viewers of your channel noticed them because they wrote about them, and I have put them down. The voices, there are a number of those. Not all are so intelligible, but many are, and many are intelligible and clear. Well, at least several. And the interesting thing, which I also noticed in that Portuguese video, the first one, that I noticed, these anomalies, is that before each voice, there is a kind of noise, harsh noise, something like, which obviously was not produced in the environment. Not in yours, not in mine. This is a Skype video, so was theirs. But this sound seems to be produced also anonymously, so that it facilitates the formation or the creation, the construction of those anomalous voices, which invariably comment on what is happening in the scene. In this case, in what we were talking about in our interviews, or what the voices are. The voices of our interviews are, if I am not mistaken, I have listened to the first video some time ago already, but they are in Portuguese, because that's the language that in general, not absolutely always, but in general, my communicators use. So there are voices that are pertinent to the situation, but most of them, perhaps not all of them, most of them in English. I do not know if I told you this, Jeff. Perhaps I did. It's so many things, and sorry if I get a little bit mixed up. David Fontana, who used to come since 2000, David followed my work, came to my house many, many times, here and in my house in France, in Lyon. And on one of those occasions, when David was here, he again repeated it in Lyon without telling me. He never told me anything at all. So in my little studio, it's really a chamber, a room that I transformed into an audio studio. David came into the studio, and they were speaking not completely intelligibly, but yes, they were, we could understand some things. We are Rio do Tempo, we speak, things like this. And then suddenly, in Portuguese, yes. And suddenly, without telling me, David, did I tell you this, Jeff? Did I tell you this story? No?
I don't think so.
Or your viewers. Suddenly, it's in my CD. Suddenly, David, without previous whatever warning to me, said, he kept listening for a little while, and then he said, Rio do Tempo, could you say, how are you? I tell you that I could not have been more stunned, because I didn't expect this. I didn't expect that he was going to ask this question. And I thought, my goodness, I almost fainted. I thought, because the voices are not on demand, they are not always there. Perhaps they are there, but they cannot come through always, and so on. So there are many buts that we ignore. But I said, oh my goodness, what if they cannot? repeat what he has just asked them to repeat. What would David think? He knew me, he would know that I wouldn't cheat or have a radio transmitter somewhere, emitter, transmitter. David would know that, but it would be so uncomfortable, sad more than uncomfortable for me if the voices did not reply, repeating, how are you, as David had requested. So there was a little pause, we waited. I could have died, but I did not. And suddenly, a very strong, loud, masculine voice said, how are you? And you can hear me shouting with joy in this recording. And then another voice said, half in Portuguese, half in English, with trust in Portuguese, which is eu confio, trust. Pause. But you, do you know what is true to you? And this I thought was also very pertinent because of course David had realized the protocol of verification, which was excellent because it came out very well. But it kind of disturbed me because, of course, I know that the voices are real. Of course I do. And David would also, because he knew me to a certain extent. But what if the voices could not have repeated what he asked them to repeat? We do not know which rules, which situations, which ways they need. So, but they did. And then another voice, masculine, said, also masculine, said, this David is unbearable. True.
I think it's worth mentioning for the benefit of our viewers that David Fontana, who's written a wonderful book about the afterlife, he's now deceased. He was a psychologist, professional psychologist, and he also served as the president of the Society for Psychical Research in England. So he's a very experienced researcher.
True. May I show David's book that you are talking about?
Yes, I see it on your shelf.
Oh, you see it. Then other people see it also.
I see the spine.
Yeah. Here next to Jorgensen. Yeah. Okay. I hope nothing falls down. So this one, in this one, as a matter of fact, there is a chapter, which if I am not mistaken is chapter 14, where he reports on these communications that he witnessed at my house and on other cases of ITC that he knew previous to my own.
Well, we're getting quite a few questions coming in from our viewers, and I think now is the time to begin to pose them to you. The first question from Joseph McWhinney asks, do you have any specific exercises to facilitate this type of contact?
The reply is no, I do not. I do not. I do not meditate. I do not pray. No, really, nothing of that type of ritual, if this is what he's talking about. However, I know that some people do, not me, not me. I just go into my studio, I sit down, very normally. I turn on my radios, I turn on my recorder, my microphone, and I start speaking to my communicators. Normally, I address them as Rio do Tempo. And so that's it. But some people do have some formulas, although it depends on the formulas, but I wouldn't recommend anything very dramatic. I think these things are better done in normalcy, in a natural way. That is my own position and my own opinion. But each one should try without getting into, some people must experiment in the dark and they lit candles and so on. I never do that. I turn my light on like this one here and that's it. And I speak to them. Sometimes they reply, other times they do not. They say, they tell me, or sometimes they reply very low that you can't understand in the air. They tell me, we are always there, we are always working, but not always can we get through.
I have another question. I think it's a related question. This is from Maria Giannetti, who is talking about teaching her son to use his inner guidance. And she's asking, at what point, when something is not working out, do we realize that it may not be our destiny?
Well, the question from my side is, which point? I mean, because there is no limit for this. You can inner guides. Is she speaking of ITC or mediumship? That I don't know. But if it is ITC, which I don't think it is, I mean, it all depends on so many things which I cannot give you account of because I do not know them all. And the communicators also don't seem to know them all. So leave it like that. What I say is that if it is ITC, good thing is to keep on attempting the contact, trying the contact, persevering. This is a good advice, I think. Just keep on doing it. I mean, I don't say for 20 years without any result, of course, but maybe for 6 months, 7, 8 months, we never know when the voices can come true and why they cannot come true.
You went at one time for nearly 2 years without any results.
Yeah, but I did, but I had already had many contacts. This happened in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, and I started experimenting in ITC in 1998, so some years already. And then suddenly, no, I had no voices, not at all. But I kept to my schedule. I kept to my schedule. I kept turning my radios on the set days and asking for Rio do Tempo, to asking them questions because that's what I normally do, and saying, one time I said, is it that you will never again speak here? And there was no reply, of course, and not at all, not even whispers or anything, or a very muffled voice, as they are sometimes under the noise. No, there was nothing. And then one day, without any previous warning, this is like David, without any previous warning, the voices started again. And they said, we came back, we returned, we are back, and so on.
And they've pretty much been back since then, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much, not every single day. I experiment twice a week, of course, not every, sometimes one time a month, sometimes more, it depends. Interestingly, they seem to speak more. I hope they are the same voices. That is from a station, from Rio do Tempo. In these interviews, that in my own studio now. Well, who knows? You know, I don't know. I don't know. I only know what I see, what I witness in my own experiments and what I have read from other communicators. I know this has happened to other people. I couldn't quote them. I do not remember who they were. I know Marcelo Bachi, for instance, in Grosseto, Italy. Yes, he also had some stop in the contact for some time. I don't know, 2 years, I'm not sure. But in this case, Bachi's case, the voices warned them that they were going to stop because he had done something that they did not like, which was some physical mediumship experiments and so on. Something of this sort. I do not know the detail, but I know that for some time also he had no contacts. But he was also very persevering man, and then they came back.
Here's a question from Rita Corelli, who says, Dear Anabela, I would love to know your opinion about the possibility of involuntary contacts with negative, dangerous forces during such attempts of communication with the deceased. And she concludes by saying, Molte grazie.
Molte grazie. She must be Italian. You see, this is a recurring observation that I have had several times. And I must give her two perspectives. From my own experience, I did not have bad contacts, the so-called bad influence, bad, unpleasant, very unpleasant contacts. People who, I mean, not people, I don't know, people or not people, voices who might insult you, call you names and so on. No, I did not have that. I did not experience that in my own experience. However, there are cases, reliable also, because Father Francois Brune, in one of his books, he reports about them. So there are cases when that has happened, the so-called negative contacts. If this lady wants my advice is, if they are not very violent, very strong, the best thing would be to ask them to go away. Please don't disturb me, something like this. By the way, I have had, not insulting contacts, but I have had many years ago, 1999, voices asking for help. Yes, that I have had. Help, help. And I was disturbed in the way that I thought, well, they might need help. So next day I asked, what can I do to help? I can't remember. I'm so sorry, but I do not remember the whole thing. And I know what I said. I said, listen, you need help, go to Rio do Tempo, because I time stream, Zeitstrom. I know it's a very positive center of contacts. Go, look for time stream, look for Rio do Tempo. And then another voice, of great authority, said in English, by the way, you have heard. So that's it. And that stopped. Well, but they were not bad voices, not at all. They just said, help me, and something like this. Help, I remember. Maybe something else, which I do not remember.
Okay, we have several questions that have come in from my friend August Goforth, who has been a guest on the New Thinking Aloud channel several times, and he himself is also a spirit medium. And he asks, do you have any more understanding about how our friends want to use language with us?
I know by correspondence, August also, yeah? We have been in contact. But I didn't understand the question. What did he ask? Do you know how they, by language, what does that mean?
Well, he says, do they learn new languages after they have transitioned? And what are the problems caused by human language that you wrote about in your book?
Did I write about that in my book? I do not remember, but what I know, because this has been told to me and to the ones I very much like to quote, which are the Harsh Fischbach in Luxembourg, because they were exemplary. They could communicate telepathically, yeah, mentally, not through language. And it seems that then through the radio waves, those thoughts, and through their concentration, I suppose, that's what they have told me once, they transform those thoughts into a simulacrum of human language, normally the language of the operator. Normally. Doesn't mean it's a rule, strict rule, no. But normally the language of the operator, as I just said, they spoke to David in English. So if this is what he wants to ask me, if they learn languages, no, I don't think this is the way, because it's really, it's all mental. It's all mental. It's all telepathic, as I said. Oh my God, my dog Nisha, she said, I am Nisha, so Nisha, and so on. Well, and one of the voices told me, Nisha, she was born in India. Nisha learned how to speak through the radio, learned, the voice said, and she wants to speak with you, the voice said. So this is one example. I think it's a good example, because Nisha, she was born in India. I had my staff, domestic staff, where Ram Prasad came with me to Japan and then to Lisbon. We used to speak with her and to my dog and to the puppies in English, yes, because of Ram. He didn't know any Portuguese. So when she spoke and I could hear, I'm Nisha, I said, is it you, mommy? Because I used to call her mommy. She had puppies and that were not desired, but anyway, they came and she replied, yes, but this time in Portuguese, sim. This very extraordinary communication. And then she appeared not she appeared, she communicated on other occasions. No language, he just said, the voice only said, Nisha learned how to speak. She was very intelligent, a highly intelligent woman. Learned how to speak through the radio. It means there is a learning process, which there is also in mediumship, I am told, or the works I read about communication, mediumship communication. There is a learning or direct voice communication and so on. There is a learning process, which also applies to ITC. If I replied to your question, August, I'm not sure. Can't hear you.
There we go. I turned my volume off in order
Okay.
not to create any feedback, because I've
Yeah,
heard from
okay.
one or two viewers that they're hearing background noises, and the background noises might be meaningful for all we know.
Yeah, they might or might not. Yeah, yeah. Who knows? Yeah.
Well,
They
Roxana,
might, but I have no background noises here. There are dogs barking in the distance, that's all.
yeah, I think they're coming from the internet.
Could
Like
be.
just now, at least on my end, I heard kind of a growling sound. And so I turned my mic off when you're speaking in order to make sure that there isn't any feedback. So Roxana Sioaza asks, what frequency do you use when you set your radios, when you're working with the radio, direct radio voice? Is there a particular frequency?
Well, people also seem to have that question often. But to say the truth, no, there is not a certain frequency. What there is, so the communicators have said, not me, my own communicators, there is a certain type of noise, which is a very sharp, very kind of, how do I describe this? Beating, ta, 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 this type of noise, which seems to be more conducive to the voices, to the direct radio voices. My own frequencies are, all of them, frequencies for state use, which means they are state emergency frequencies in this part of Europe where I am currently living, and radio hams and radio emissions cannot get through in these frequencies. So I suppose this is very convenient, you know, because then people might say, oh, stray radio emissions. No, in this case, they can't be.
There. Many more questions coming in. Here's Christopher Michael asks, while you were a diplomat, did you ever receive messages but were too afraid to tell your superiors, or did you share your experience with others openly without retribution or pressure to resign?
Well, good question. Yes, I did share my experiences with everybody through a website, mostly through a website at the beginning. Pressure to resign, not openly, but yes, there was some. Yeah, it's a very conservative country, you know, Portugal. At the time, I suppose, was even more. It still is, to say the truth. And not an open pressure to resign, but a hidden one, yes, which I did, not because of the pressure, I couldn't care less, but because I could ask for a leave of absence, which was early retirement, and I did. And because I wanted to do my ITC work, I thought that I should, that it was, as I still think, a duty from my side to put this to the people, to the public, to people interested. Well, it would make no sense if I kept this for myself. This is not for myself, this is for everybody.
Here's a question coming in from Steve Sneed, who asks, can we use a digital or a portable recorder to pick up the electronic voices?
You can use any recorder. I have used all of them. A computer also is good. Any recorder doesn't make any difference. Yes, yes, of course you can. I use my old one because that's the one I'm used to, and I suppose the communicators are used to also, because this connection between the devices and the communicators and the operator is also important. They said so in Luxembourg, not in Luxembourg, in Rivnes in Germany, about Adolf Holmes. I'm not a technical person, and at the beginning I didn't know how to interact with these devices. But then, of course, slowly I got used to them, and I have my old recorder, which is a Pioneer, 23 years old. But this is to say that at the beginning, and Carlos, my friend Carlos will remember, he's not here, that I couldn't touch that recorder. I couldn't touch with my finger, because it would make such a noise, like an electrical noise. So I invented a stick, a wooden stick, and I had to touch the touches of the recorder with the wooden stick. Couldn't use my own finger, because it used to make this incredible disturbing noise. Now it does not. This is to say, so it's all connected, really. In which way, I do not know in which way.
Okay, here's a question from A Little Light Just After Midnight. That's his name or her name. People use names they can make up on YouTube. It says, why is seance forbidden in almost all churches? Until we contend with this, it's difficult for me to support or go any further. The squashing of seance is the squashing of spirit itself.
Well, two replies. I'm not a religious person. I'm not Catholic. I am not even Christian. I am not Buddhist. I am not, maybe I like the Tao. Yes, I do. But I'm not a Taoist. Perhaps I should be, but I'm not. Anyway, if you speak church, what does it mean, church? Catholic Church? Father Francois Brune was a Catholic priest. And he followed these communications, not only ITC, but mostly ITC, but other ones also all over the world. He was a Roman Catholic priest. So is it forbidden? Not really. It must, if you are speaking about the Catholic Church, which I do not know, maybe in some regions, in some areas. Does that have to do with the church in general, or does it have to do with local churches? These are different things. But Father Francois Brune, Les Morts nous parlent, which was translated in several languages, and other books by him. He wrote many books. He has said this many times. No, the church is not opposite to these contacts. By the way, when these two Italian priests, Ernetti and Gemelli, in 1952, high level scientists also, Father Gemelli was a famous how do I say, medicine academic, and Ernetti, Father Ernetti was more into the arts, but they were of high level, scientific high level, mainly Gemelli. There is still the Gemelli a clinic in Rome where the last Pope was when he got ill. So they were apparently, this is not apparently, this is true because it was confirmed by the Pope himself to Friedrich Jürgensen, Pope Paul VI. So when these two priests, they were recording, cleaning, I think, cleaning Gregorian chants, and something that they used to do. In Venice, was it in Venice? I don't know. Oh, in Florence, perhaps, Santa Maria Maggiore, I'm not sure. Anyway, during one of these operations, sound operations, a voice, an extraneous voice, appeared recorded in the middle of there was a pause in the Gregorian chants that they were cleaning, and this voice appeared. And Father Gemelli recognized his father's voice, his deceased father's voice. And he said, what is going on? What is this? And he told his companion, Father Ernetti, this sounds like my father's voice, but this is impossible. I'm speaking of September 1952. And he said to Father Ernetti, let's try it again. And they again started working with, must have been these reel-to-reel machines, yes? And the same voice appeared and says, and said, appeared in this second tape, or the same tape, doesn't matter. What are you doing, Testone? Testone in Italian was the name, the pet name of Father Gemelli. Don't you recognize me any longer? So this happened. And the priests, you can imagine at that time, yes, Friedrich Jürgensen had not yet happened. This was later in 59. They took this situation, the report of the situation, to the Pope, which I'm not sure which one, but it's easy to see by the year. And the Pope said, don't be afraid, don't be disturbed, priests, because this has nothing to do with Spiritism, which was not well regarded at the time. It still is not. Unfortunately, I'm not a Spiritist, but I mean, I'm a free thinker. But the Pope said, don't be afraid, priests. This has nothing to do with Spiritism, because they were afraid. They were considered to be, I mean, interacting with the spirits and so on of Allan Kardec and etc. But the Pope said the tape recorders cannot be influenced. They are machines. They are not prone to suggestion. Don't be afraid. This is all right. It's even a confirmation of what we have been advocating in the church, it meant, of course, of survival of spirit, they must have said, consciousness, I say. So no, this was 50 years ago, 70 years ago. And the Pope himself, and I say, why did I refer to the Pope? The Pope himself, then it must have been Pope Paul VI, if I am not mistaken, confirmed it to Friedrich Jürgensen in one of his private encounters with Jürgensen, and his friend and journalist, whom I know, Anders Swedish, Anders Leopold. And the Pope make the report of the whole story, saying, you are not the first one, the Pope said. This has happened before to Gemelli and Ernetti. So, as I said, I think it depends on the churches.
Well, that was a good story. And it does depend on the church. I know that the Church of England has, I guess I would call it a working relationship with the spiritualist community in England. Here's a question from Manoj Shankar, who asks, do people in the afterlife see and hear us?
According to, I've asked that question. They sometimes see us. I was told, can you see me, in this case, me, and I think one of my dogs was there also, perhaps Carlos also, I don't remember. He said, only some, the voice said, only some can. Only some can. Hear us. Hear us. I asked that from my main communicator, Carlos de Almeida. How do you understand our voices? How do you perceive our voices? And he replied very loudly, very clearly, it's rhythm, rhythm, rhythm. We know it when we follow it. That was the exact reply. Which rhythm? Must be the brain rhythm. Which other rhythm? The brain rhythm. It must be. That I cannot tell you. Well, it's the brain rhythm of the operator, but it must be the brain rhythm of the operator. What he said was, it's rhythm, rhythm. We know it when we follow it. That was the reply, very typical of the voices, and this grammatically speaking, I mean.
Here we go again. There's a question from Andrei Slavoj Krasowski. He says, how often, he wonders, does it happen that the voices might come from some other source other than a deceased person?
Well, there are so many of those cases. But normally, from my knowledge, I always refer to my own knowledge and my own experience, because that's what I can guarantee in some way. There are many cases of high entities of a different level, not human, other nature, as they themselves have said, to Adolf Holmes, to the Hartfischbach in Luxembourg. So entities of a different non-human nature, however, higher consciousness level. How often? I do not know how often. I have recorded once a voice that very much seemed to be the technician's voice, once. But then on another occasion, I asked my communicators. I'm always fascinated by this, not to say personality, because it would be silly, by this entity, the technician, who was not a technician. He was supposedly a high-level being. I once asked my communicators, I would so much like to speak with the technician, with Angelo. I call him Angelo, but he seems to be like a major angel. Angel not in the Christian sense, just an entity of goodness and wisdom. And they replied, but you have spoken with it. Should not use masculine or feminine, of course. You have spoken with it many times. But I didn't recognize the voice because the voice didn't sound like the famous voice that he used in Luxembourg. Like the voice in Luxembourg, I only have one, which was that one that I said, you have heard, when I addressed the voices that were asking for help.
Okay, how about, have you ever had communication with voices that identified themselves as extraterrestrial?
No, not me. No, I did not. I did not. I did not. I know who has, for instance, Dr. Suerjan Salter in Luxembourg. She identified as a physicist from another physical planet. She has not spoken with me. And I do not know of other, yes, perhaps there are some communications. No, they didn't identify as extraterrestrials. It was called the Light Federation 2109. But they communicated with Adolf Holmes. But I do not, some of the entities, there are others. I don't recall them identifying as extraterrestrials. No, I recall them identifying themselves as higher beings, not extraterrestrials. Maybe they were, I don't know.
Okay, and going back to the original question by Andrei Slavoj Krasowski, he's thinking, I don't know if you're familiar with this case, he's talking about Philip the Ghost in Toronto, who communicated through rapping. And Philip was a fictional character that this group of people in the Toronto Society for Psychical Research made up. So the theory or the thinking is that he was produced by living humans through psychokinesis. Do you have any reason to think that that has occurred with your voices?
I do not know. I know of Philip, of course, but I do not know the details. I've not read the book. There is, how is it called? I spoke with David about it, but no, I have not read it. Psychokinesis to this level of having voices, speaking while I speak also, different kinds of voices, feminine, masculine, chants, music. I don't think anybody can produce that by psychokinesis. But to say the truth and to reply, I do not know in detail the Philip case. What I know is that they invented a story of personality, and he would reply, but wouldn't that, as I said, I'm speaking in blank, but couldn't that be thought forms or something? I really don't know. I don't know the case, but I don't think it's similar to voices that identify themselves with names, sometimes with other names unknown, who produce wonderful chants of such beauty as I have had, who are masculine, feminine, who sometimes interrupt me, who sometimes I am speaking and the voice comes and speaks also on top of my own voice. How can a human produce that through psychokinesis? It has not been demonstrated, therefore it is not.
Okay. Now you mentioned music, and I have a couple of questions about music. One from Manuel Aleo, who says, is there music at Rio do Tempo?
There has been many pieces of music, yes, some very beautiful. Yeah, there was. One of them lasted for 10 or 15 minutes. It's very strange music, which has been analyzed by Dr. Uwe Hartmann, and other pieces of music are chants with beautiful, deep voices. Some of them are in my website. Can check them on there. I think they are. I think they are. But if they are not, one day they will be. I have to redesign that website because it's getting obsolete. The language, I'm told, the webmaster tells me. But anyway, yes, there have been many pieces of music. Beautiful also. One of those chants lasted with interruptions, I mean, for 1 hour and a quarter, something like that. Yeah.
That's very impressive. And here's a related question from Diane Biffin, who says, her question is, would it help to play the favorite music of a deceased person in order to create an emotional field invitation for them to come and communicate?
Who knows? Perhaps yes. Perhaps yes, it would be. I really do not know, never thought about that, but why not? It's just a way. Why not? That it guarantees results, that's another story. I don't think so, but that it can be tried. Well, yeah, why not? I think it's a good idea. But it's also a good idea, besides the music, with or without the music, to think about a deceased person, in this case, deeply, with love, with desire to communicate. Does it guarantee a communication? No, it does not, but it will help. It will help. I'm sure it will help. Still, this must be continued because persistence is one of the key factors in these voices. Persistence, perseverance, yeah?
You've certainly shown a lot of perseverance yourself. And I think in my reading of the literature, that seems to be one of the key things. If you're the kind of person like me, if you don't get results right away, you move on to something else. You probably won't do that well with ITC or EVP.
No, true. Yeah.
Here's a question from Christos Vlamis, who says, greetings. Is Anabela aware of a YouTube video where Sarah Estep, known for her research on EVP, claims to have received an actual phone call from Constantine Raudive after his death?
Yeah, I am. Yes, I am. I am aware of that. Yes. As I told you the other day, I met Sarah Estep. Did I tell you? I'm not sure if it was you. Perhaps it was or not. Sorry. Yeah, I met Sarah Estep in Reno at a conference. Oh, I very much liked her. And that is well known. Yes, that phone call from Constantine Raudive to Sarah Estep is well known. So yes, I know of that. He contacted several people, not all ITC operators. Others were not ITC operators, like Madame Aline Piget in France. And it's very interesting because I very much like this phone call. She reported on it. I do not know if to Francois Brun or somebody else in France. And she reports, she transcribed the conversation, apparently from Constantine Raudive. And he says, be aware, dear Aline, that the purpose of life on earth, is not only the goodness, to be goodness. The purpose is the expansion of consciousness. And I think this is important. I think that this is what it is. Besides, if you are able to expand your consciousness, naturally you will be good. Yeah.
Okay, it's at the top of the hour, and I'd like to let our viewers and listeners know we will continue the live stream for another half hour until we get down to half past the hour. Here's a question from Paulo Almeidal, who says, are you familiar with the work of Sonia Rinaldi in Brazil?
No, not really. I know of her, but I have no contact with her. And we use different methods. We think differently. So the reply is no.
Okay. And here's another question. This is something I've never heard of. Are you familiar with Ghost Tube?
Not really, no. But
Okay.
it must be sorry, must be like one of those ghost hunters and so. Must be, I don't know. Never heard of it, but from the name, I would say. Ghost Tube, I don't know. So many of these things. Unfortunately, I would say.
Yeah. And Christos Flamis also is asking, is it possible for people to listen to your recordings that contain music? Are they available anywhere on the internet? And you were just saying, of course, they will be posted on your website if they're not there already. Why don't we give out the website?
Sorry, and no, they will be, more will be posted, but they are already available in the internet, in my own website, not in the internet anywhere, my own website, which is www.itcjournal.org, O-R-G. They are available there. Yeah, oh yeah, of course. My whole CD with samples of the voices, which I published to illustrate affirmations which I made in my first book, Electronic Voices, Contact with Another Dimension, is in my website. And some of the chants are there. Oh, yes, they are. Not all. Of course, not all, but they are many, but some are. Yeah.
Here's a question from George Ondexler, who says, from day one, I found it easy for me to have spirits come through my devices. I don't fully understand why that is. So why?
I don't know. It must be, you see, the other day, one of the interviews, the previous ones, I mentioned, if you remember, Jeff, Klaus Schreiber and his daughter, Karine, who told him to try with the TV. And there it started the Schreiber method and the Schreiber images and so on. Yes. So after my conversation with you, I said that Karine had said that, and then I will say what my communicators told me, but I think I'm repeating myself. But anyway, I found it after our talk. Karine said exactly what she said exactly was, we are an incarnation of electricity. Okay. To Klaus Schreiber, Karine. To me, the communicators have said, we also have a body. It's a much more beautiful, much more flexible body. It's constituted by a kind, I underline, of electricity. So this was long before I read Schreiber, Rainer Holber's book about Schreiber. It says the same thing. What does it mean? It means that perhaps you have some affinity with electrical devices. I do, for instance, I do. With involuntarily, things can get broken or can start working, and I do not know why. This has happened for many years, and more after I started my experiments in ITC. So maybe that's what happens, that you have an affinity with these electrical devices, because these voices come through electricity. And it could very well be, I'm not sure. No, I mean, it is a good thing not to be sure of anything. Some people reproach not being sure, even me, they reproach me. But I reiterate my position. I am not sure of anything. I can only transmit what I am told, and sometimes I can convey my own thoughts on the subject, which I am doing, for instance, right now.
Here's a person who's asking you to answer their question that you probably, it's something they have to figure out for themselves. Vicky Canaril asked, she says her loved one passed away 6 weeks ago. He communicates to me through my pendulum. Does there seem to be a time to communicate electronically that is too soon?
I don't know about that. Maybe there are reports of people who said that the next day they received a communication. That is the case of this famous photograph of Friedrich Jürgensen to Thorlin. Peter Thorlin was his name. Claude, perhaps, I'm not sure. And his image appeared on the screen of their television set the next day, as a matter of fact, at the hour of his funeral. So is there a time? It depends. I wouldn't be able to answer that. Just a matter of trying, because I don't think it will negatively affect the person that passed away. Why? I know that it is recommended a period of rest, That's what we are told also from that next dimension. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter, as the technician said in Luxembourg. But that's not a general rule. Friedrich Jürgensen was certainly a highly evolved being. As Professor Senkowski told me, he was told by the technician that he was one of them. The technician told Professor Ernst Senkowski he was one of us. So we communicated next day, or the next day, the day of the funeral. I do not know if it was the next day or a couple of days or a few days later. So I can't reply to that with certainty.
Oh, okay. Here, Mel Jacobs is asking, have you always been open to spirit, or did the first time you heard this surprise you, and did you find it hard to believe at first?
Yeah, I found it very hard to believe. Of course I did. Yeah, I thought it was like when I first read about it, I thought, how bad that they invent this kind of, no, because I had not heard of it at all before. And I thought, well, they invent these stories. This is like a spirit science fiction, I thought. Because, well, I didn't know that it existed. I didn't know Jürgensen, I didn't know Constantine Raudive, and they are the references we should always keep in mind, I think. So it did surprise me, because I didn't think it would be true when I first read about it, which was just read about it, did not experiment. And when I started experimenting, it surprised me even more that I received the voices, not so much the EVP voices, which were many and very frequent, but the direct radio voices, yes, I was very surprised because they were and they are very unusual.
Here is a question from Z Ter. Why talk to the dead? Why visit cemeteries? It all seems weird to me, but I may have weird ideas about death and the dead. I just prefer to live life going forward with no regrets and no visiting the past.
What can I say to that? There is nothing to say. It's just a preference. I could never forget the ones I loved. Be them people, be them dogs, be them cats. I cannot, even plants, I cannot forget them. And I have not forgotten them. So I do not share that position, but I understand it. Each one is the way he or she is, isn't it?
I think that's a very good answer. This is not for everybody, but it is for apparently for tens of thousands of people. There's so many hobbyists working in this area. Here's a question from Silent Alpha. If people are reborn after they die, how can they then communicate with us when they are no longer dead?
What do you mean? If they are reborn, reborn, it means reincarnated, yes?
Yes.
How can they? Well, if they are in this earth and plane, of course, they are in a, as I said the other day, I'm not an expert on reincarnation. I was told by my communicators that reincarnation, yes, exists when there is no other way. The technician said in Luxembourg that even if you don't like it, he said, even if you don't like it, reincarnation exists. Not only for humans, people tend to think that humans, of course, it's an anthropocentric position, which I do not share at all. But the technician said animals also follow the cycle of reincarnation. He never said it was absolutely indispensable. And as I just said, to me, I was told only when there is no other way. It does exist when there is no other way, sorry. But the question was, how do they communicate when they are reborn? Naturally, they don't communicate. If they are reborn here in this plane, they can't communicate. They must communicate. I'm speaking in the conditional because I don't possess the truth. They speak when they are in that level. If they are reborn, of course they cannot speak, but while they are not reborn, speaking in temporal times, which I think it's a totally wrong idea, but we do not understand life without time, isn't it? So how can we speak about this? I think that all these conjectures, I understand them. I myself make them often, but they are a little bit idle because we do not have the information to understand it all. We, little by little, we may try to understand more, as the communicators have said, but we can't understand it all. It's little by little. And Mainly, it's very important not to draw definite conclusions from anything, I would say, and leave everything open, because we know so very little. We know so very little, so very little. A, a tiny dot of infinity. So what can we speak about?
Very good answer. A question from Laura Newbert, who is one of our volunteers. Do you believe your training in diplomacy made you more receptive to this form of communication?
No, not at all. On the other hand, it did not make me more receptive. It made me less receptive. If something, no. No, diplomacy has nothing to do with this. And it's to completely different ways. No, I don't think so. I did not make me more receptive. What I think made me more receptive was my love for the departed, which is deep and constant. Yes, yes. Diplomacy doesn't play any role. I don't think diplomacy is a good field for this area. It's totally different values are at play, unfortunately, I would say, which, by the way, I never obeyed.
Well, it does seem to me that in a way you are serving as, you might say, an ambassador from the world, from their world to our world, or vice versa.
Well, that I think that role fits Friedrich Jorgensen, whom I absolutely love. He's there behind me. Yeah. He was the ambassador of, because he established not the two Italian priests, scientists, but Friedrich Jorgensen. He established that bridge. The bridge was established through him. I am only one of several, many perhaps. I don't know them all, but I know several. An ambassador, we are all ambassadors, the ones who are in this field, who are seriously in this field, I must stress. I think we are all ambassadors, yes, in different ways. Not, it doesn't have to be direct radio voices. Any EVP voice, clear voice, positive voice, is as important as a direct radio voice. The only thing is that a direct radio voice allows for dialogues. And in the case of Luxembourg, the technician established, that's the reason why they called him the technician, organized a display of devices. Some we understand, others we don't understand at all. As Professor Senkowski said, he was a physicist, which enabled those fantastic communications, which have been so, how do I say, so denied and so badly distorted, and so many operators also accused of lying. There's nothing of lie there. They were witnessed by a body of scientists who asked questions directly from the entities, from Suez and Salter, from the technicians. No, the Luxembourg contacts were really a moment of grace in the history of ITC, as Professor Father François Brun used to classify it. He used to call ITC a moment of grace, an hour of grace, but I now apply it to the Luxembourg because the information received was so important, so complex, and so thorough that I say a moment of grace within the history of ITC.
And here is another question from August Goforth, our mutual friend, who asks if you ever got to know Marcelo Bachi. And,
I did. Sorry.
Let's talk about his work.
I did know Bachi, yeah. Oh, yes, I did personally. I went twice to Grosseto, was at his experiments, spoke with the communicators. I invited him for a conference I organized here where I lived in Vigo, Galicia, and he came. Yes, I know. I knew Bachi. He died, I do not know if it was last year or the year before, I think. So he was over 90. A very interesting personality, very, very not esoteric type at all. Also. Yeah, August, I met Bachi, yeah, on several occasions, yes.
He was quite famous, I understand, because he received voices through the radio that were witnessed by many, many people.
True, yes, and he particularly devoted his work to the contact of youngsters, deceased youngsters, with their parents. I mean, there were others who were not children, of course, but he used to receive and to welcome those people going through bereavement in very hard ways to his studio, and reportedly he received contacts from these children. Some of those I witnessed, not all, of course. He used to conduct his experiments weekly on Fridays, if I remember well. And yes, but on the occasions I was there, these voices would come and say, I am, I don't know, Luciano. And then the mother say, Luciano, Carino. And so yes, and I spoke with some parents also there in Italy, in Grosseto. That was the aim of his experimentation at a certain point. At the beginning, no, at the beginning was he had always been a man interested in the paranormal, Bachi. And he got acquainted with it. He told me the story years ago in London. He lived in London for some years, and he went to one of these circles, mediumship circles, because he was very curious. He was a boy, and that's when 1940s, I would say, 49, something like that. And that's when he then got more and more and more interested and started experimenting like everybody for EVPs, which he did of reasonable, mediocre quality, average quality. And suddenly, I'm not sure if this was the way, but the story, but yes, it was. The voices said, like they told Jurgensen, use the radio. And he did. And then the voices started coming through the radio. Yeah.
So in his case, people would come to him who were bereaved, and he would arrange for them to have communication with their deceased loved ones through his radio. Has that ever happened with you, that people could communicate with their deceased loved ones?
You see, Bachi had a center, which was called Psychophonic Center in Grosseto. And his experimentation from the beginning was public. He had Sergio Ghiommi, his friend, Luciano Capitani, Silvana Pagnotta, who was his great sponsor. She was the sponsor of the center also. So the Bachi's experiments were always different from the beginning. The people would come, they would sit. He had like 50 or so seats in the room, a fairly large room, and they would sit. And Bachi would experiment with the voices, not the people, Bachi. And then he would address the voices and say, listen, we have here some parents today. Could you please bring some of these children to speak with their parents, please? And so on. And then sometimes, not always, some voices would come and which sounded like young, they were more blurred than the other voices that spoke with him and that spoke with me also there. But you could understand, but they were not so clear. But you could understand if they said Augusto, let's imagine, or Luciano or Sergio. You could understand, but they were not so perfect, not so well constructed. And that's how it happened. Bachi would always be with the radio, not the people, Bachi.
Contacts and the contacts, I know that your contacts and the contacts in Luxembourg were related to Rio do Tempo, or as they would say in German, Zeitstrom. And I wonder about Bachi. Was he also communicating with this group, or was it a different group?
It was a different group called Radio Peter, which, by the way, I want to be absolutely correct in what I say, and I do not remember if it was Raudive or Jurgensen who mentioned Radio Peter already, much before Bachi. No, it was not these well-known stations with Bachi. But Paolo Presi, who was I've not been in contact with him. Unfortunately, I do not even know why, but the truth is that some things happened in his life and so on. And they had a group, very good group called Il Laboratorio, directed by Dr. Enrico Marabini, a prestigious studioso, researcher of the paranormal, whom I met, whom I very much like. He's deceased now. And they assembled this group. There were 4 people. Paolo Presi was one of them, and he used to go to Grosseto, where Bachi lived, frequently. And Presi, whom I know well, told me that he was there in Grosseto, and he had already started experimenting for EVP himself also, and getting some voices, as the majority of people do. And one of the days that he went to, he was very disturbed by this. I do not know why, but I know that he told me he was very disturbed. He went back to his house. He lived in the north of Italy, experimented as usual, and he received voices saying, "We are Radio Peter," which is the group that contacted, or at least one of the groups that contacted Bachi. And he got so disturbed that he stopped these experiments. I do not know why he got so disturbed, because as I told you last time, one of my friends, an institute teacher in Portugal, she also came here with another friend, and both of them started experimenting after they had been here with me. I explained everything I could explain, and they went home, they started experimenting, and they got voices saying, "Oh, we are Rio do Tempo." There were low voices, but one of them, for instance, some of them were not that low, like the one I told you, we are all fused, all fused. And the voices identified as Rio do Tempo. Why Prezi got so disturbed, I don't know. And unfortunately, I never asked him. But I know, he told me he got so highly disturbed with this correspondence between Bachi's Radio Peter, which had already been Jurgensen. I think it was Jurgensen. And that he stopped there his experiments. The reason, I don't see any reason that would justify this, but each one reacts in a different way, isn't it?
Okay, well, we're right at the bottom of the hour, which is when we said we would close, but I do want to close on a little more positive note. So let me just leave you with one last question. It's from Anelli Martini, who asks, what would you say is the most precious thing you have received from these voices?
Difficult question. My dog Nisha's communication was the most precious thing I received. Of course, my father, of course, my grandmother, of course, but ça va sans dire, as you say in French. Nisha's little voice speaking directly with me was the most precious because she was a dog, had the appearance of a dog, I would say. And she could communicate with me. So yes, Nisha's, I have had other identified of my beloved non-human animals, but Nisha was the first one of them. She was so unexpected. She was so stunning because the first thing she said was, I'm Nisha, we are here, she said. And then conversation, well, little conversation, of course, continued. And then I spoke with Rio do Tempo about this conversation. And I said, well, I asked them, was it really my Nisha who spoke? And they replied, very clear also, and totally clear. Yes, it happens that it was for you. So this was my most precious. I treasure Nisha's contact as I think anybody would.
Well, and you've spoken of it every time we've talked, so I know how
every time I can.
Yeah.
Speak of it every time I can.
Well, Anabela, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with our live stream viewers. We have had nearly 2,000 people who have been viewing this live stream. So you are having an impact in the world today. And now I am going to turn off the live stream.
Thank you, Jeff. And viewers, of course.
I think I should wait about 20 seconds because of the delay to make sure that it happens. Okay, not yet, not yet. Okay, here we go. You know, the only thing is
you are frozen now. Not frozen.
I haven't turned it off yet because
yeah.
I think I'm looking at the screen and I don't know how long the delay is. I don't want them to miss anything. So anyway, here we go. There. Okay, it's